Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon in here. We're going to break down the Lauri Markkanen extension. He has decided to stay in Utah for the next 5 years at a price tag in total of $238 million. We're going to break down all of the extension possibilities that he could have potentially negotiated with his team, that Utah could have negotiated. We're going to talk about what he is as a player. We're going to talk about where the rest of the league goes from here. Do we like this deal? Do we not like this deal? And then we'll talk a little bit about the Olympics at the end. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? It was 104 degrees today in Southwest Kansas on August 7th, and tomorrow on August 8th, it will be 77 degrees for a high. So a nice 30-degree swing out here in the middle of nowhere.
I love it. That's got to be just like so bizarre to have to deal with that, right? Like, I mean, Melbourne is like considered the city that can give you like 4 seasons in a day, where it'll be super hot in the morning and then it will hail in the middle of the day. But I mean, that's like crazy, going 30 degrees in a single like 24-hour period.
Yeah, no, you never know out here what you're going to get. It gets hot, it gets cold, it's windy most of the time. Every once in a while, you don't have any wind, usually whenever you would like a little bit of a breeze. And then we like went through this stretch where it was raining all the time. Everything was green. It was beautiful. Didn't have to run my sprinklers every day to keep my lawn looking the way I want. And then we haven't seen a drop in like 2 months. So you just never know.
It's absolutely crazy. Okay, Bryce. So we finally got big news. You and I have been kind of waiting for this for a while. We've been kind of planning our summer off-season schedule a little bit about, was Lauri Markkanen going to do this extension? Was he going to decide to, not sign this, and then Utah would likely trade him? Ultimately, he decides to do this renegotiation and extension from the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz have been hoarding their cap space all summer in order to potentially lift his salary number to the highest possible point that it can be, which is about $42 million for the upcoming 2024-25 season, and then extend off of that number in order to get a little bit more flexibility potentially on the back end. This was not Lauri Markkanen's max number, as we'll talk about in a little bit. We're going to go through what I thought all of the possibilities were for a Lauri Markkanen extension and kind of compare what he did to other potential avenues that Lauri could have gone down or that the Jazz could have gone down. His max number was something like 250 in total money over the next 5 years. This year, by doing this deal right now, he gets around 238 in total money. So he takes a little bit less in order to sign in Utah. I will give you the floor here before we even dive into everything else. When you saw this deal, what was your immediate impression?
So I want to start with what I thought this may look like in terms of, we all knew he was going to get the 24 million this year and add it to the 18 million that was already on the books. That was no surprise to anybody. That was probably the most obvious thing and the most reported thing. I think the idea that he waited till today to sign it was something that was often discussed and talked about, and that is what happened. So he essentially has a no trade clause for this upcoming season because of when the trade deadline date is during the year. He can't go ahead.
Rules are that once you sign an extension like this, you cannot be traded for 6 months. The NBA trade deadline is scheduled for February 6th. By signing this on August 7th, February 6th is 5 months and 30 days or whatever from this date. So he is past that window. So he will not be traded this year.
So he knows he's going to be in Utah all season long. From all reports, it sounds like he loves Utah and all of that. And, we can revisit those conversations. We'll talk about this a little bit because I actually wonder what this means for the potential of him getting traded in general over the next, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and whether it makes it more or less likely. I will say I thought the money came in a little bit higher than what I expected. I did not expect him to be at $30 million or $35 million, but I thought maybe there would be a flat rate of 40 to 45. And so the fact that he went ahead and got those incremental raises every season that puts him at 54 million on the very end, I don't know that I'm like overly negative about it, but I guess I was expecting a little bit more. Hey, we're going to give him that 24 million jump this season, and we're going to get a little bit back over the other 4 years. And that wasn't, I know they got a little bit, Sam, a little bit, but I'm surprised they didn't get more, or I thought my expectation was they'd get more.
So I'm going to put a pin in that momentarily. I don't disagree, but I want to just generally outline a few things about Lauri Markkanen before we kind of dive into the weeds on extension numbers and possibilities and everything like that. So in his 2 years in Utah, Lauri Markkanen has played about 120 games. He's averaged 24.5 points, 8.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists. He shot 49% from the field, 39.5% from three, and 88.5% from the line. I believe he is third all time in 3-pointers by 7-footers at this point, behind Channing Frye and I think Dirk Nowitzki. I think he's, one of 3 players all time with those two to knock down, X number of, 175 threes over 5 seasons or 4 seasons or something like that. So he's genuinely an elite shooter. I think the thing that has gone a little bit underrated about Markkanen's game and the way he's lifted in Utah is I think he has gotten more athletic since he entered the NBA. I think he is a much bouncier and honestly, frankly, quicker athlete than what we saw when he was at Arizona, than what we saw early on in Chicago. And I think a big reason for that is that in Chicago, it just felt like he picked up injuries substantially often, right? It felt like he would miss 20 to 25, even at times 30 games in a season. And he never really got that maybe off season to improve. It's possible. He never had a full run of it. In Utah, he has gotten a full run of it, and the level has really lifted in a significant way. To me, if I was ranking players across the NBA, and this is a project that you and I will probably go down the road of doing at some point this summer once things really die down, I would venture he's probably in the top 25 players in the league. It's possible he's in the top 20. I feel a lot more comfortable saying top 25 right now. He is one of the best play finishers in the NBA. I think that is the easiest way to phrase it. And, if you're watching on YouTube, hey, go watch on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. But, you'll see some clips here of what he's capable of. And the things that stand out with me to Lauri, for people who just haven't watched Utah the last couple of years because they haven't been particularly relevant in the overall ecosystem of the NBA, he is not just a shooter.
Sure.
Yeah. They can play him somewhat real at the 3. You can play him with 2 bigs like John Collins and Walker Kessler. You can play him with 2 bigs like Walker Kessler and Kelly Olynyk the year before, right? And you can really be successful with that. He moves really well. He is able to jump and finish at the basket. He dunks the ball a ton. He is all over the place in terms of being able to cut back door. I think that's maybe the most underrated skill. His off-ball movement is absolutely elite for a 7-footer. It is so much better even than someone like Karl Towns in terms of the movement off the ball leading into functional open 3-point jump shots that he's able to create for himself, right? I love what he is capable of on offense. To me, he is a real perimeter player on offense. He can attack closeouts and drive to the rim and finish. he can, if you try and overplay him so that he stops, coming up to the wing from the corner, they often start him in the corner on a lot of plays. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. And then he'll come up and, try and get to the wing or try and take a dribble handoff or something, and then he'll fire and shoot. But if you try and overplay that and like try and deny that, he'll just cut back door and finish at the basket, like super easily. His intelligence and basketball IQ as an offensive player and as a scorer is exceptionally high. Now, he is not a passer. I think that his passing is one of the weakest skills of top 25 players in the league, right? To me, that's what separates him from being like a real all NBA guy that will like consistently make that team. Now, maybe he'll improve at it as he gets older. He is still quite young. He is, if I remember correctly, just turned like 27 years old.
In May. Yep.
So this was his age 26 season. He has some window to improve here as he goes 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. That's the window of this contract, right? I don't know that I can project that at this point, though. So to me, because of that, he profiles best as a number 2 option on a great team. I think he is so good as a play finisher and as a scorer that he can be that on a great team. Like, I think he could be a legitimate number 2 option on like a potential title contender. I don't think he can be a 1, but I think he is. I don't know that enough people have recognized the leap that he has taken since he has gotten to Utah and how real that is.
It's funny because I went back and looked through my notes from this season in the Jazz game I watched, and almost every single one started out with, he's so good. He's so freaking good. He's so skilled.
Yeah.
He's so talented. It was like I was reminding myself because, I didn't watch Utah every week like I did some teams, and we weren't talking about them every week. So I prioritized other teams. But when I did get a chance to watch them, my notes it stood out to me that I was just reminding myself he is unbelievably talented. And I'm glad that you brought up, it's not just the 3-point shooting. He can attack you off the bounce. The cutting is a huge thing because, if you top lock a shooter coming off staggered on the weak side and they don't have the threat of going back door and catching a lob, well, that top lock is a lot more effective. You essentially take them out of the play because it's really hard to come off a staggered if you're getting top locked by the defense. And so his size, the versatility he brings offensively, you didn't even touch on. You can play him at the 5 at times as well. And then think about what that does for your offense. Yeah, it's cool to be able to play him at the 3 with 2 bigs. What about playing him at the 5 with a bunch of other really skilled players and daring teams to guard you that way? Now, maybe that presents some things defensively, but I don't think there's anything denying how skilled this guy is, especially at his size. I think what it comes down to for me is, can a team win a championship paying this guy this type of money and him be your second option? I think the answer is probably yes, right? Like, you can pay 2 of these guys. So as long as Lauri is at least a number 2 option and a higher end version, then the contract's fine. Like, I'm not going to say that I disagree with this contract. I think in my mind, I had set expectations that it still was going to be like oh man, Lauri's on an amazing deal. And that's just not, it's fine, but it's not amazing, where he was just on one of our 10 best contract values in the NBA 6 months ago or 4 months ago, whenever we did that.
Yep. So, just to put the numbers in context a little bit more, Lauri's had a true shooting percentage about 10% above league average over the course of the last 2 seasons. Like, genuinely, he is a monster play finisher. In terms of the contract, maybe this is where we can talk a little bit about this, right? So I created a little graphic for us to be able to jump through, just a little spreadsheet. So at the top here, I have projected NBA salary cap. So 2024-25, this upcoming year, it's 140.6. That is locked in. With the new TV money, the current expectation is that the salary cap will jump by 10% every year. So in 2025-26, it would be 154.7. In 2026-27, it would be about 170. In 2027-28, it would be about 187. And in 2028-29, it would be about 205.8. His max numbers here, if he was to have gotten the full number. So as you can see, I've also put percentage of the salary cap on this sheet as well, because as you and I have talked about, it is incredibly important to discuss these numbers, given the way that the salary cap is going to rise in the context of what the percentage of the salary cap is. So Lauri Markkanen, his maximum this year, 42.2, he's getting that. His max next year, 46.4, he's getting that. The next year, the 2026-27 year, his max was 50.1. His 2027-28 year, it was 53.8. His 2028-29 year, it was 57.5. That would be about $250.1 million. That was his max number. At the end of that deal, he would have been about 28% of the salary cap. If he had waited until free agency to sign a deal with a different team, he would not have gotten this renegotiation and extension. He would have gotten a max deal, 46.4 in 2025-26. And then the next 3 years, he would have gotten 5% raises. So that would have maxed him out at 217.6. Now, he could have gotten 8% raises on these numbers if he had been traded to another team and then extended, or traded to another team and then signed a contract, in the offseason. So you can add a little bit to this total. It would have been like 225-ish, right? Somewhere in that ballpark, 225 to 230. The actual numbers are according to Keith Smith. So shout out to Keith Smith. Had he done, or he got the 42.2 this year for 30%, and he got the 46.4 for 30% next year. In 2026-27, they descended the contract by $300,000. And then he has max raises the following 2 years. So in 2027-28, he will make 49.8. In 2028-29, he will make 53.5. Essentially, by the end of that deal, this deal that he has signed, these are the actual numbers, he will be at between 26 and 27% of the salary cap. That is a good deal for Lauri Markkanen. If he is at less than 30% of the salary cap, and he's essentially making pretty close to what a rookie max deal is making, in my opinion, that is pretty good. Now, you mentioned earlier that you were a little bit surprised that they didn't get a bit more of a reduction, right? So here I put a flat cap structure in, right? Or a flat extension structure in. If he had gone down this road, they had renegotiated and extended him up to $42.2 million. And then they gave him the full max the next year at 46.4, and then left that at 46.4 for each of the next 3 years. That would have been about $228 million guaranteed. That's about what he could have gotten in a trade by going somewhere else. And because nobody else can renegotiate and extend him at this point. Nobody else has the space to do it, right? So that 42.2, that extra 24 million, that goes out the window. I am a little bit surprised that the total money is not closer to this 228 number as opposed to the 238 number. If they had done it this way, and, credit goes to SIG Sports, Mike Lachitsky, Sammy Wolochowski, like they did a good job getting Lauri every dollar that they could have. There are two sides to every negotiation. That's a whole thing. This would have had Lauri at 22.5% of the cap. I think that this would have made him an eminently more tradable target, but I still think at 26% of the cap in 2028, 29, it's probably going to be fine. And that he is still an eminently tradable player. And this is a totally tradable contract barring injury. I did think it would probably be a little bit closer to this 228 number though, where it would have been like the flatter cap structure. Again, to me, if I was, Utah, I would have been negotiating against the fact that, you mentioned all the reports are that Lauri really loves Utah. Everything I know is that is like 100% real. That like I've, reached out, I've talked to folks in Utah, I've talked to folks close to Lauri. Like that is real. He loves the city. He loves kind of not, I don't want to say like he's like totally against like being in a big city, but he is more of a lower key guy. Like he's not all about like going into like a big city. Like he has a wife and like a small, like a younger family, and is somebody that just wants to go hoop and, be a like normal dude who's not like going out every night and stuff like that. So I think that I probably would have tried to get a bit of a discount on this comparatively to what they got. I'm sure that they tried. I don't think it's an enormous deal in the grand scheme. And as you can see with the percentages of the cap, this deal is going to be 27% of the cap in 2026-27, 26.6% of the cap in 2027-28, and 26% of the cap in 2028-29. Ultimately, I think that you're going to be able to move him pretty easily if you need to, if you're Utah.
I want to be clear. I'm not negative on this contract. I think there was just a thought in my head of this would get done, and because of the re-up aspect, maybe we would be able to see the extension part and go, oh my gosh, they still have him on a great deal. I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I'm just saying I'm not looking at that and going, holy cow, Lauri's going to be an insane value 4 years from now. He's probably at market value. He's getting paid what he's worth, which is great for him. Like it's awesome. And I don't think it's bad business for Utah. You can't win all of these negotiations. Whenever guys go out and hoop, you're going to have to pay them. So not everybody's going to get the Jalen Brunson discount that New York Knicks got, right? So I don't mean it to come off negative. I just think I had expectations that maybe that's how we'd come in and we'd be sitting here going similar, different players, similar to the Jarrett Allen extension where we go, man, those numbers are going to look awesome moving forward. And that's a super tradable deal. Now, I'm sure if a team's still out there looking for a number 2 option, they will be more than happy to pay those numbers. And as I look at this, as we're recording, just the yearly where Lauri ranks and seeing that he's just barely above Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Franz, and Evan Mobley on those rookie deals. I think it's about $4 or $5 million each year. I'm even more okay with it. Like at the end of the day, that guy he's substantially better than all of those guys, has proven more, at least up to this point. You can argue upside and some other things, but seeing that what those guys are going to be making, those guys are all going to be making close to 50 million in 28, 29. Then it makes even more sense to me. I'm even more okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Lauri has played only 120 games the last 2 years. This year, it was like more of a, I think that if they were in a real playoff race, he would have like played through like some of the shoulder like injury that he had late in the season. I think he had like a sore quad one game, right? Like, having said that, like he is a guy that has missed some time. I think that is where this deal could go like a little bit sideways. In Chicago, 52 games, 50 games, 51 games the last 3 years. Then in Cleveland, played 61 games in 2021-22. And then, in Utah, he has now played 120 out of a potential 162 games or 164 games, right? So he does need to show that he can play 70 games in a season. I think he probably could have played 70 games in the last 2 seasons at the end of the day. So I'm not wildly worried about that. I just would like to see it before I'm like 100% locked in on this being a great deal. But I think it's probably a very good deal. And it goes back to the thing that I told you and that we talked about on the show whenever Franz Wagner did his deal. If you think a player is a top 30 player in the league, it is going to be or will be a top 30 player in the league in Franz's case. It is very, very, very difficult to sign a contract that is going to be bad this offseason, and that will be bad long term this offseason because of the way that the salary cap is going to rise over the course of the next 5 years. As you can see on this sheet here, the salary cap is going to go from $140.6 million to $205.8 million or something in that ballpark because of the new TV money that is coming in. It's going to be hard for Lauri to not be worth something in the ballpark of that, in my opinion.
What do you think? And maybe we're not actually, before we go to what do you think Lauri is defensively? Like, are we at neutral defender? Do we think there's some sort of positive because there's at least some versatility? Because I think that plays into it when you're talking about this level of player. You know, you're talking top 15, top 20, top 25. We raved about his scoring and the different ways he rebounds the ball. He's averaged over 8 rebounds a game the last 2 seasons. But if you're not a real creator, which, there's an argument to some of the other guys, he's not an on-ball guy. He's not your primary creator on the offensive end. So maybe that's a counter to some of the points I made. And then also, what is he defensively? Because if he's not at least neutral, now that starts to kind of like, can he be the number 2 option? How does he contribute to winning? And those type of questions start to come into play for somebody that you're paying this kind of money to.
I think he is a fine defender. I think he is a situationally very, very, very slightly above average defender. If you put him in the wrong situation, I think he can be a below average defender. Right. But again, like, I think he's more athletic than he gets credit for. He's 7 foot tall. He takes up a ton of space. Like, I would ideally love to play him at the 4 next to a spacing center and a guy who can protect the rim. Right. Like, I that would be my primary goal if I was Utah. It's hard to find those guys, obviously, but and then at the 3, I would love like a versatile defender next to him. Because again, like, he is a real offensive chess piece. Like, you can really move him around and make things work in a number of different ways. So I am a big enough fan of his offensively to where I'm fine with him being like a net neutral-ish defender, which over the course of the last 2 years in Utah, he was like according to EPM, like a -1 defender this year and a +1 defender the year before. That's like within the ballpark of being like right around an average-ish defender. I think he knows where he's supposed to be. And again, because he's so big and is capable of moving well enough still, he is fine on that end, in my opinion. Not great, but he is like fine.
That's where I landed as well. Like, I would say probably neutral whenever you account for the fact that there is some versatility. He does rebound the ball at a decent clip. And, you talked about the athleticism and all of that. So maybe you can move him around and dictate matchups and all of that. That is impactful, but that's where I was. So he's not going to hamper your defense, but he's not going to be the anchor of it or the reason you're a top 10 defense if he was on a top 10 defense at some point in his career.
Yep. Okay. So before we move on to what Utah is going to look like now moving forward and what the rest of the league does now that this deal has gotten done, we have a couple of quick messages from our sponsors. Shout out to Hungry Root. As you guys know, my schedule is jam-packed in July, prepping for the NBA draft back in June and then traveling to Vegas for Summer League. You have to meal plan, you have to grocery shop, you have to cook, you have to figure out ways to stay relatively healthy. It takes up precious time. Food delivery can be expensive. And, at the end of the day, you end up going to fast food, right? But that all changed with Hungry Root. Hungry Root has truly eased my mental load and made me feel less overwhelmed. When I got my first delivery, I was amazed at how easy it was to whip up a healthy, delicious meal. The ingredients were fresh and high quality, and the recipes were easy to complete. Best of all, my wife was also a big fan. I've tried eating healthy in many ways, from meal prepping to using food delivery services, but nothing compares to Hungry Root. It saved me so much time, grocery shopping, meal planning, and it helps me stick to my dietary needs. Plus, I'm just wasting less food, which is great for the environment. Hungry Root is the easiest way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high quality groceries, simple, delicious recipes, and essential supplements. Right now, Hungry Root is offering Game Theory listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Yes, you heard that, free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/game theory, GAMETHEORY, to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/game theory. Don't forget to use our link. That way they're going to know that we sent you. Also sponsoring the show today is Mando. As you know, I had to go travel to Las Vegas, and packing is a nightmare. I never know what to bring. I often end up bringing too much, to be honest with you, and then I buy things over there and end up overweight on my luggage. It's just a crazy, crazy deal that trying to travel overseas is. Anybody that's done it knows you never know how much to bring. One of the biggest dilemmas is always like hygiene products to take, though. Those are real weight things. Like, they have water in them. They have saline solution for contacts, right? Do I bring tiny bottles of shampoo? Do I bring face wash, body wash, or do I just pour my shampoo into travel size bottles? Here's the solution that made my life way easier. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar. This 5-ounce bar is a game changer. It works as a shampoo, face wash, body wash, deodorant, and if you need a shaving lather, it's perfect for that too, technically making it a 5-in-1 product. Clinically proven to control odor for 24 hours. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar is formulated with a gentle alpha hydroxy acid that stops odor at the source. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how it exactly works, but trust me, it just works. A doctor developed it. You know it's fine. This bar simplified my hygiene routine. It was the only thing I needed to really pack. Think of all the room I had in my suitcase to go buy Blu-rays, which, as you can see on my wall behind me, that is stuff that matters in the United States. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar comes in 3 cologne quality scents: Mount Fuji, Bourbon Leather, and Pro Sport. My favorite was the Bourbon Leather. And guess what? I've got a special offer for you. New customers can get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with that code Game Theory, GAMETHEORY, at shop, SHOP, Mando, MANDO.com. That's shopmando.com. It's safe anywhere on your body. It's created by a doctor. It's powerful enough to combat the toughest body odor, but it's gentle enough for every crevice. It's aluminum-free, baking soda-free, cruelty-free, dye-free, vegan. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice. It's just the perfect little starter pack from Mando. Don't miss out. Use that code Game Theory at shopmando.com to get that $5 off your starter pack. Simplify your travel and stay fresh with Mando. Okay, Bryce, what does this mean for the Jazz? Let's start there. The Jazz are a team that I would say charitably is no higher than 13th in the Western Conference this upcoming year.
Yeah,
I mean, we can go through the teams.
Portland and San Antonio.
Yeah, and I think there's like a fairly real chance. I think they are more in the tier with Portland and San Antonio than they are with anyone above them.
Agreed.
Houston just took enough of a leap last year to where I think that Houston is probably a slight level above them. Plus, they have all the young guys that are going to keep.
Even if
better.
None of those guys get better, that team I think is still better than Utah. And
I think that's likely.
That would be crazy that none of those guys improve.
I think that's likely. So, ostensibly, in this upcoming draft, the 2025 NBA draft with Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, some of the guys
Nolan
we saw at the U18s, Nolan Traore, we just broke down his game last week or earlier this week on the show. If you were Utah, what would you be hoping for this upcoming season? How would you approach the rest of your offseason, given that you still have like $13 million to play with? If you want to. They had about $37 million in cap space before this deal. We'll talk about maybe their offseason here in a minute. But now that you have Lauri locked in, what is kind of your offseason plan here?
Yeah, I think, and just so everybody knows, this has been something that people talk about too. They do owe a pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder that is protected. This year it's top 10. Next year it's top 8 protected. So they do obviously want to keep that, along with, because of what this draft is. I honestly think I would just rock with the roster And maybe, I don't know how quickly, I may even sell off some of the vets in terms of, I don't know what the market for John Collins is at this point. I know what it was, obviously, whenever he came to Utah. Colin Sexton, we've talked about this. Both Sam and I are fans of Colin Sexton and his game, and think that maybe he could be a contributor. He's, on a decent contract that's under 20 million. Jordan Clarkson, but you have all of these young guys, and Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams, who they just drafted, Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, even guys like Bryce Sensabaugh from 2 years ago. I would find out. I mean, call it tanking, call whatever. I would play Lauri and the young guys and just see and start to figure out what these guys are. Because here's why you can really do this. You have him locked in. He just chose you. He really chose you by waiting till the 7th to sign the contract. Everything we've talked about. So you have a little bit of leeway with him. I would go one more year. I don't think I would sell off the vets right away, because I think those guys do help you evaluate the young guys a little bit. Lauri by himself doesn't do that, but I would play them as much as I could without winning a ton of games. You're not going to out-tank the Nets anyway. And then this summer, I draft one of those 5 guys, whoever I get, him plus Lauri plus whatever young guys, and then maybe I go make a move for another star or something like that, and then I really start trying to make my moves forward.
Yes, they have like 2 different avenues that they could go down here, right? They could try and get better right now. A deal that makes theoretical sense for them, if they just wanted like a talent play, right, is Brandon Ingram.
100%.
You could go do like John Collins for Brandon Ingram works under the salary cap right now, because they have the difference between John and Brandon's deals is under that $13 million window. I personally don't think I would do something like that, because at the end of the day, you'd be paying Brandon Ingram probably. I mean, like here's the fun thing. I think New Orleans probably won't do an Ingram deal unless they get like real value coming back. I wonder if they would do John Collins and Walker Kessler just straight up for Ingram. I mean, they need a center.
Yep.
Like pretty desperately. The problem is, like, what does Utah do at center? They don't really care right now. Like, they'll figure that out at a later date, right? I don't think I would do it if I was Utah, because I wouldn't want to give up Kessler basically for free. Because my thing is, if I was Utah, I don't think I would want to extend Ingram immediately. Like, if I was going to go down that road, I would not want to just move heaven and earth to get him and then like give him $45 million, whatever it is, which is apparently what he wants. So to me, I would not go down that road. It's a possibility though, that they could do something like that just from a talent play perspective. The next option is that you can try and trade off the vets, which is kind of what you said. Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, John Collins, etc. I would probably try to move Clarkson. I think I would be pretty good with that. I don't know what you're going to get for Clarkson necessarily. I don't know that there's like a 1st round pick out on the table for Clarkson right now. Jordan's another guy that has like really embraced Utah from what I understand, and like really loves the city, really enjoys being there. But at the same token, he's a guy on the wrong side of 30 with your team now. You have him for 2 years at 28 million. So it's like a completely reasonable contract. But the problem for Utah now is we have seen this summer what these score first guards and score only, frankly, guards have gotten on the market. They didn't really get paid all that much. And Clarkson, I think, is like a level above certainly the Malik Beasleys and the Luke Kennards and everybody else, right? But having said that, I don't know that he's going to bring back like a solid 1st round pick. I think he probably is more like, hey, we're going to take a flyer on a young guy that maybe is in like a distressed situation right now.
Yeah.
Like the Clippers for them are like an interesting spot for me. The Clippers have enough like scoring guards to where I don't know that they'll be like wildly interested in this. Like they have Norm Powell, they have James Harden, right? They could probably use like one more, in my opinion. Could you do something like take the PJ Tucker deal and get Kobe Brown for Jordan Clarkson? Like something along, and like get like a couple of seconds or something.
And
for Jordan
Miller.
Clarkson.
Can I get Jordan Miller back?
Yeah, can I get Jordan? Honestly, if I could get Jordan Miller, if I was them, I would do that. If I could get PJ Tucker, Jordan Miller in like a couple of seconds for Jordan Clarkson, I would probably do that if I was Utah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, look, maybe the Clippers don't really give a shit about the PJ Tucker money anymore, but the other avenue that the Clippers or that the Jazz could take is they could actually really help some teams out here and get out of the tax. And they could just take the PJ Tucker deal and get like some value and just take the Tucker deal into their space.
And this is after watching a team lose a lot of games for 4 years, Sam, is you want to be careful about trading off all of your vets, and especially ones that space the floor. And I know Clarkson didn't shoot it great from 3 last year, but he has real gravity. Colin Sexton sneakily last year shot 39% from 3 on 4 attempts. John Collins shot 37% from 3 on over 3 attempts. Walker Kessler doesn't space the floor. Keontae George was inefficient as a rookie. Cody Williams, a young guy, not a ton of volume with his 3-point shooting. Isaiah Collier has floor spacing questions. My point here is they have to be careful, because I've seen it play out where you have young guys with maybe some floor spacing questions. You want to get them on the floor together and see what they look like. But if you don't have real veterans around them to at least do that, even if it's nothing else, but at least space the floor, you all of a sudden find yourself in a situation where you learn nothing about them. So that would be my one thing with the Jazz is I'm okay if they want to kind of trade off this season and stay in the top 5 and do that. But you don't want to do it to a point where you don't even learn anything about Keontae George in year 2 or Cody Williams as a rookie or even Walker Kessler. Like the Walker Kessler situation is very weird to me, but obviously they must have some questions about what he is and if he's part of their future. I don't know. It's like I say, it's very weird to me, but they got to get answers on guys. They still need data points for these guys, even if it doesn't necessarily correlate to wins.
So I understand your point here. I do. The problem with comparing them to the Pistons is that they have the best 7-foot shooter center potentially of all time outside of Dirk.
That's fair.
So like that just like completely changes the calculus here. The other guy I would keep is I would keep Sexton.
Yeah.
Too. In all honesty, like that dude is super competitive. He has really taken a jump on offense.
He's only 26. He's only 26.
Yeah, like I don't know if a lot of people have noticed like the Clarkson leap that has occurred on offense. He's probably like a top 40 to 50 player in the league on offense right now, I would say. Like something in that ballpark. He can really score the basketball. He has gotten better as a distributor. I wouldn't say it's his primary goal necessarily, but he has gotten better at it over the time that he's been in Utah. So if I was them, I would probably be looking more at moving like the Collins Clarkson guys. And I think I'd probably be willing to take like a little bit less money than what, other people maybe would, or like take a little bit less value maybe than what other people would be willing to.
Yeah, and just like real quick with Sexton, I talked about the 3-point shooting. Honestly, he's been a really, really good shooter from beyond the 3-point line throughout his entire career. Outside of the one season, he only played 11 games. Where he's made a jump is from just overall. His 2-point percentage has continued to get better. I mean, he's 55% 2 years ago, and last season 53%. So, I mean, just really, really scored the ball. And as you mentioned, almost 5 assists this last season.
Yeah. So in terms of their offseason now, right? What they have left is they have like 13 million in space, I believe, because of the way that they've structured things. Like they haven't yet signed Drew Eubanks, Johnny Juzang, who they've given money to. And then they've also like held off on Filipowski, right? And they can put those guys into different exceptions. Like you can, I think, fit both of Juzang and Eubanks into the room exception, if I remember correctly. So they have like real money that they can play with here. The kind of guys that the teams that they can really help in terms of tax, like the Clippers are, I'm looking here, they're like $3 million away from the tax, right? The Warriors, I think, are like bizarrely close to being under the tax somehow. Yeah, the Warriors are $6 million from the luxury tax right now, that barrier. If they would be willing to take like Kevon Looney's deal, or, if they would be willing to take the Gary Payton II deal, which I think the Warriors still want Payton, but nonetheless, like if they would be willing to take like one of those deals worth more than $6 million, the Warriors should be willing to like give them pretty real value to do that, because the Warriors getting under the tax and like resetting all of their like repeater things and everything like that, and like not having to worry about that into the future, and giving themselves further flexibility to go out and do moves like Markkanen this summer and everything. That's like real value to them. The Clippers, same deal. Like if they can find a way to get under the tax, that's like enormous for them as they continue to try and figure out what the next era of Clippers basketball is going to look like now that Paul George is gone. Even like Dallas somehow is like $5.5 million away from the tax right now. Like if they would be willing to take back the Maxi Kleba deal, or if they would be willing to take back like something slightly more expensive, like if they would be willing to do, like the Mavs like Dwight Powell, but like if they'd be willing to take flyers on like Omax Prosper and Quentin Grimes, even though I'd imagine that like the Mavs want to at least see what both those guys have, right? Maybe mid-season, something like that. They have the ability to like really help some teams out at the end of the day.
Yes. And they've hit the floor now, right? So they could actually take this into the season. And because these teams with the tax numbers don't have to be compliant, or like that doesn't hit at the start of the season. So this could carry over into the season though, still as well.
Yeah, they can roll this over into the season, if I remember correctly. Yeah, though that's the thing though. Like, is they're looking for potential options here? If I was them, I would be looking at, hey, we can help a bunch of teams out here by using our space and renting out our space and like getting assets in return. Like if I was the Warriors, I really like Moses Moody, right? But I don't know when Moses is going to play on this team, right? Yeah. Like they have on the wing currently Wiggins, DeAnthony Melton, like Draymond Green will play some minutes at the 4. Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski will play some minutes at the 2, obvious. Like there are just a lot of guys on that team. If I was Utah, I would be trying to probably get Moses Moody right now. Because Moody gets, I think like Moody alone might get the Warriors under the tax. Like if I was Utah, I'd probably be willing to say, hey, we will give you like 2 second-round picks, or maybe our worst first. No, I probably wouldn't give up a first for Moody at this point, given that, the antithesis is like he just doesn't play this year and ends up in a weird spot. I would say like, hey, we will give you like the 2 best second-round picks that we have. We'll take Moses Moody. You get your salary sheet under the tax right now, and you might feel like a little bit more flexibility here moving forward.
Yeah, it's actually exactly what the Warriors would need. Via Spot Track, 5.78 million. They are into the tax, and Moses Moody makes 5.803 million. So, I mean, it would line up perfectly if Golden State was wanting to do that. And that, I think that's an awesome flyer for Utah. I mean, I don't even think it's a flyer. I think it would just be an awesome thing, because I think Moses Moody is good and just needs to play. But yeah, if Golden State was that interested in getting, under the tax, which like you say, there's repeater things that go along with all of this. So ducking it for 1 year could go a long ways for them. Then I could, if I'm Utah, I'm all over that.
Yeah. But look, like there are a number of teams, like we mentioned, like 3 or 4 of them, but that's what I'd be looking to do. I'd probably rent out the rest of that space and see what I can do there. in terms of Utah's like roster build now moving forward, and then we're going to get to other teams, I swear. I think I'm a little bit lower on this young core than maybe the Jazz are, and maybe like what their fan base is potentially. I'm not quite as high on Keontae George as what some are. I think I like Taylor Hendricks like a little bit more than Jazz fans do from what I see right now. Like I still think Taylor Hendricks is going to be like a pretty good starter-ish caliber player. Cody Williams is like an interesting, awesome flyer, but like Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier. I mean, I like Filipowski, but like I don't think Filipowski is like a guy that you build around necessarily. I don't see a guy on this team outside of Lauri that I'm like itching to build around necessarily among the young guys. Like I think Keontae George will play in the NBA for a long time, but these like score only guards, I think you can just kind of find them for relatively cheap on the market at this point. So he would need to like explode into being like a Bradley Beal style player. And I think that is an aggressive projection of what he can. And like, he could be that, like there's a non-zero chance of it, but I think it's an aggressive projection at this point.
Yeah.
So when I look at their roster, I'm like, they really desperately need like the super high upside swing. They need somebody like Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, whoever. I would be pretty strongly trying to position myself to tank.
That's what I was going to say is I don't think they have the number one guy. We just talked about this with Lauri. Like, you know, for me, he's a really good number two, potentially high end number two. He just doesn't have the on ball creation to necessarily be your number one. And I don't even know if I have a guy, like if you really wanted to slot guys, I don't even know. Of course, Cody Williams could get there, whoever. I don't think they have a number three guy. So to me, if you're looking at like three guys to build around, it's 2025 NBA draft. And then young guys plus this plethora of draft picks that they have to go and acquire that guy. So, you know, if you get, let's say you get VJ Edgecombe and you think he's that dude, or Ace Bailey and you think he's the dude, or whoever with Lauri, and then you use the couple young guys, a couple draft picks to though get the third guy. And then you still would have draft picks on top of that. Like they have positioned themselves with a ton of assets, but I think ultimately they probably end up packaging those assets to get at least one of their top two or three options on this team.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely outcome as well. Look, Cody Williams is interesting. The thing with the Utah Jazz this year is that like people were saying like they didn't want to renegotiate and extend Lauri because they were worried that he would stop them from tanking. I don't think Lauri's presence on this team is going to stop them from tanking, given what this backcourt situation is right now. I like Colin Sexton more than other people do, but like Keontae George is not ready to help you win basketball games, in my opinion. Isaiah Collier, like if they were to play him, that would be like a auto tank right now in the NBA. And that's not a statement on like Isaiah Collier's future as a player. He's just nowhere near ready to play in the NBA at this point from like a turnover perspective and from a, you know, consistently being able to shoot perspective, and defensively, like he's not ready. Right. There's just like no way I think that they don't end up in a position where they're not tanking, because if they just play the young guys, like they'll naturally do that. So I would probably look at Clarkson. I'd be willing to move Clarkson anytime from now until the deadline, and I would make sure I move him by the deadline. I would really want to move John Collins. Like you said, we saw what John Collins was worth last time he got traded. It was basically a deal where the Hawks traded him into space and like got a second round pick back
and
along with the Rudy Gay contract.
Yep.
Yeah. So look, like I don't think you can expect to get a lot from John Collins, but I would still be trying to move those guys and kind of see where they're like, try to just build out minutes, because the thing that would be hard, I think, is just like sitting those guys down, because those guys are better basketball players than the young guys right now. And locker room wise, that is a difficult dynamic. If you just start playing like Taylor Hendricks over John Collins, right?
Yep.
Because again, I really like Taylor Hendricks. I think he's going to be a good player. He's not better than John Collins as a basketball right now.
Yeah.
So it creates like a hard dynamic, I think, from a locker room perspective, and you don't want to have like that kind of negativity around as you go through a rebuild. Like you want to have like positive vibes and a really positive atmosphere now that Lauri has locked in with you moving forward.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. So where does this leave the rest of the league? So let's start here. I wonder if this now kind of unlocks a couple of things around the league, right? Is there a chance that this could unlock like a Brandon Ingram deal from a team that feels like they were in the mix to potentially get Lauri, if not now, then in the like in season, right? And try to get him as a deal that you make at the deadline in January, whatever. I wonder if teams could shift to Brandon Ingram now. I wonder if teams could try to like unlock a couple of other players. To me, like the next domino is Ingram, though. Shams is reporting that Ingram wants to stay in New Orleans, and New Orleans doesn't want to trade Brandon Ingram, but like they also don't want to extend him at that number. And when push comes to shove, like if they wanted to extend him at that number, an extension would be done by now, right?
Yep.
So when push comes to shove, I would venture that he's still a guy who's probably going to get moved.
They also need a center in New Orleans, Sam. They don't have a center that's ready. I mean, I don't know where we would rank them, but if it's Daniel Tice and Misi and Trey Jemison on a two-way and Makovic, like I like those guys in different ways. And I don't know, maybe you just play 15 minutes a night from each of them and see how it goes. But I just think they have to find a way to get a center. And I felt like the most obvious way of that is Brandon Ingram, but it's probably not that easy to build out a Brandon Ingram trade specifically to get that return. Now that, we saw Jarrett Allen re-up in Cleveland. So, assume he's staying there at least for a little while, even though that's still a very tradable contract. The Utah thing was interesting, that we talked about with John Collins and or Walker Kessler. But yeah, I don't know. The Brandon Ingram market has been very interesting. He's just in an interesting spot because of where does he end up on your pecking order for a team? How valuable is that? And how much are you willing to pay for wherever he does end up as what? Probably ideally a high-end number 3 option is what you really want him to be if you're trying to win a championship. And so that's tough.
It's hard, and to pay that guy $20 or $45 million a year is hard. And you probably don't want to do it long-term in Ingram's case, because as much as we talked about like injuries with, Lauri Markkanen, right? Brandon Ingram has like legitimately gotten like fairly injured over the course of his career, to the point where since his rookie season, he has not played more than 64 games that he played this year in a season. So he consistently misses like 18 games, 20 games, 30 games in a season. So if I was like another team, I would be fairly worried about that part of it if I was extending Ingram as well. The other name that like does track to me is I do wonder what Portland is going to do now. Jeremy Grant like is a name that I think you could really see on the market at this point. It seems like their price tag on Jeremy Grant is high based on some of the reporting. I don't blame the Blazers for posting such a high price tag. It does seem like this is Joe Cronin's kind of MO, is he's going to shoot for the stars and try and get whatever he can. When they signed that deal, it was certainly a deal that you and I had some like pretty real questions about. Him getting $30 million a year felt very aggressive to me, especially given that he is already 30 years old. And yeah, you can say Jeremy Grant, he's going to be making 20% of the cap in 2027, 28. But I mean, I don't think he's going to be worth anywhere near that when he's 34 years old. Right. So I don't know, man, that to me, like that feels like he's a good player, but it feels like a fairly negative deal that I don't know what to do with on the market right now.
Yeah, this is one where with the length of the contract is really what gets me. You know, I pull up Spot Track and look, and it's 30 million. That's not awful. Jeremy Grant's still a solid player. But then you look and it just, okay, well, you got him for 25, 26, and then it goes 26, 27, and then the player option in 27, 28. And like you said, by that time he's into, his 33, 34 season. And that's where the hiccup is for me with Jeremy Grant. So I don't think they're getting major value for Jeremy Grant. And are they going to move off of him just to, as a neutral value or very little value? Are you trading him just for, some non-real first round pick or a low value first round pick or, a flyer on a young player? Yeah, I just don't know if that's where Portland would want to go. And so, these are the names that we have right now, but it's hard to work the trades and find the ones that make sense right now. I just wonder if we're done for right now in terms of the movement with these guys. And it makes sense. We're into August, right? But, and then what happens whenever new guys and new names come on the market throughout the season, once injuries happen and this team is a little better than we thought, this team is a little worse. So I don't know, like the thing with Ingram, not to go back, but there is a real contract situation there though with him.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are the Pelicans, what are you doing? Like, you can't just let him walk this offseason. He's an unrestricted free agent. So
I agree.
Like, that's where that one, I think, is a little more time pressed compared to the Jeremy Grant one.
I agree. Like, you can't let him walk, but you don't want to pay him. That's why a trade to me is like the most sensible thing. With Grant, just like looking at Portland's roster, like he sticks out like a sore thumb in terms of age, in terms of role, like, and in terms of just, they have a lot of dudes on this team now. Like they want Scoot Henderson to play 30 minutes a game. They want Anthony Simons to play 30 minutes a game. Certainly they want Denny Avdia to play 30 minutes a game, right? So like that's your 1 through 3 moving forward. They have all of these bigs, DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan and Rob Williams, right? I would imagine that like for 5 minutes a game, we might see like a couple of those guys on the court together, right? So that's some minutes at the 4 that will be taken up. And then you've still got Shaedon Sharpe on this team. You've still got Chris Murray, who you want to develop.
Tumani Kamara, who was interesting. Like there was something there defensively, at least.
Really good on defense. You have Matisse Thybulle, who has to play minutes. You have Jeremy Grant still on this team. Jeremy being 30 years old, he's like 3 or 4 years younger than like everybody other than second year player Duop Reith now, right?
My God, Duop.
Yeah, shout out to Duop Reith. We'll talk about him momentarily when we get to the Olympic stuff. But like, if I was Portland, like I would see Jeremy Grant as like a very real potential trade chip. It's just that I think that they probably screwed up giving him the deal that they did and like not maintaining his trade value. Jeremy Grant, by the way, over the last 4 years, averaged 21 points, shooting 45% from the field, 38% from 3, 83% from the line. I think there's been a bit of a drop off defensively compared to what he was certainly when he was younger, but he's not like a horrific defender by any stretch of the imagination. He's just a volumey kind of shooter and scorer now. Maybe you could reduce the offensive load and then make him more of a defensive player. But the whole reason that he went to Detroit in the first place was he wanted the offensive, capability. Maybe that's different now that he's been paid and has this enormous contract and is now locked in at over $200 million for the, life of his career. But yeah, I don't know who's going to like bite at that deal for real value.
I think you would have to really buy into what you just said in terms of, because I didn't think the defense was as advertised when he was in Detroit, but it was I felt like it was because the offensive usage was so high, and he's actually gotten more efficient with it, as you outlined, since when he was first doing it in Detroit. But I don't think with Jeremy Grant, it's bringing him in to shoot 16 times a game. It is to shoot 5 threes a game at 40%. But to me, it would be to rebound the ball more than 3.5 times a game and to be a much better defender than what we've seen the last 4 seasons. So that would come into your intel of, is he going to be that guy if we brought him in and he's our third option or fourth option that's going to hit corner, catch and shoot threes, be athletic in transition, and then really take on primary defensive matchups, because that's where then his value would start to match the price tag.
Yeah, and like this is where like front office, IQ and, capability comes in, because Jeremy Grant in the last year of his 4-year deal remaining is going to make $36.6 million or something. Kyle Kuzma has 3 years left. And he's going to make $19 million in the last year of his deal. He's literally going to be making about half of what Jeremy Grant makes. And to me, I think Kyle Kuzma is a better player than Jeremy Grant, in all honesty. I would rather have Kuzma. I just kind of buy him as a shot creator a little bit more. And I think I buy the defense a little bit more in a winning situation. Like, I buy him being able to pair those two things together a little bit better than I buy Jeremy Grant being able to pair those two things together on the court. So, I mean, yeah, like if you're on the trade market and you're, looking for a 4-man who can go get a bucket, and then you're hoping for a bit of an improvement on defense, to me, Kuzma's the drastically better option.
I think when you factor in the money, it makes sense. The one thing I think this would be an interesting conversation. Kuzma shoots a significantly lower percentage the last 2 seasons, Sam, but at much higher volume. So
from 3, you mean, I assume?
Yeah. Sorry, from 3. So Kuzma is at, let's just call it 7 attempts and 33% the last 2 seasons. Jeremy Grant's at, let's call it 5.35 attempts at 40%. I still feel like that's enough attempts from Jeremy Grant where you're saying he's definitely the better floor spacer. Would you agree? Do you think Jeremy Grant has more floor gravity and spacing than Kyle Kuzma, or no?
I would say no. I still think Kuzma gets guarded more.
Okay.
It's hard because like Grant has been at the top of scouting reports for so long now, like being in that shitty situation in Detroit and being in that shitty situation in Portland, where like Jeremy Grant like definitely gets guarded. I guess you would guard Grant on open threes a little bit more if you scaled down the roll.
I say
just like off the catch,
especially the role we're talking about, right? I think that's enough volume that
Yeah.
the percentage is that much better. Now, it was just interesting. The thing is, Kuzma rebounds more, passes better, and is on a better contract. Like, I think when you include everything, it's Kuzma, if for no other reason other than the contract. But it was just interesting because, you talk about floor spacing and, percentages look good, but then you have to factor in volume. And we probably have to go and look at, what they shot from the corner specifically when we're talking about this role and catch and shoot only attempts. But I just thought it was interesting as I was looking at their 2 numbers.
Yeah. To me, like Jeremy Grant is like a 4th or 5th option on a really good team.
Yeah.
That is now making like number 3 option money.
Yeah.
And that's what's really hard. That's what makes it like quite difficult if you're trying to build a roster and you're trying to trade for Jeremy Grant, right? Now, some teams can just do that because they have the, flexibility salary cap wise, but some teams can't. And I think a lot of teams are averse to doing deals right now where the money might be like a little bit more questionable.
Okay. So real quick, who are the teams we think are open? Like, we really have our eyes on to trade for. It doesn't have to be specifically Brandon Ingram or a Jeremy Grant. I mean,
to make an upgrade or to make like
an
a
upgrade
consolidation deal or something like that.
So the Grizzlies, right? Like consolidation, that's the name that pops in. Agreed?
Yeah, the Grizzlies. I mean, to me, like the Warriors are the
Warriors.
Like the Warriors are the one that they're going to have to do something. It's just, what do they do? Kind of thing. I would guess over the next 6 months, like we'll find an answer to that.
The Lakers.
The Lakers probably will do something, I would guess. What that will look like, I don't totally know, just because their deals aren't quite expiring yet. Like Gabe Vincent has 2 years left. Rui has 2 years left. Like they have a weird spot that they're kind of in. The Grizzlies, yeah, like they're prime for a consolidation deal where they really try and swing and go for it, I think. Yeah, I mean, New Orleans is another team that like has to figure out their center position, right? certainly Portland, I think, has to figure out like all of the bodies that they have just on their roster, right? The Clippers probably want to get under the tax.
You think Miami has any moves in their play in their?
It's they're hard to predict because it seems like they're going to go with Jimmy for this, like, they have 2 years, 100 million left on Jimmy's deal, but next year's a player option. So he kind of holds the cards there. It's kind of hard for me to know with Miami until we know exactly what's going to happen with Jimmy once he gets into the season more than anything. Yeah, I mean, a few other teams that could look to do something. Toronto, I think, like, just has, the Bruce Brown deal. They have the Chris Boucher deal. Both of those, they get up to like 35 million in expiring money, if I remember correctly. So that's a team that I think could do something. Atlanta still probably will look to do something, I would think, given
how can we
their
get
salary situation.
How can we get Clint Capella to the Pelicans? I don't think he makes too much. He probably makes too much.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to do that because he makes 23 or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just not like, unless they want to do like McCollum or something like that, but that's tricky across multiple avenues. Yeah, like to me, like there are just a number of teams that are kind of incomplete right now. Like what in the world is Chicago doing with Zach LaVine, right? They have the Lonzo Ball deal that'll be expiring this year. They have Nikola Vucevic still on this roster, but they're clearly making like a youth movement right now. I mean, like Vucevic and LaVine are guys that I don't know how excited people are going to be about those guys necessarily, but LaVine still has like 3 years, $130 million on his deal. So
you think Giddey gets an extension this summer? I mean, they traded a real asset for Josh Giddey.
Yeah, we'll do extensions later this summer.
Okay.
My guess is that he probably gets something. I don't know though. That's a total guess. And maybe that is where we can transition to the Olympics now.
Okay.
And talk about that. So Team USA is still rolling. Like there's no reason, I think, to think anyone other than the US team is going to win. Do you agree?
Yeah, like like my best friend across the street that I coach football with is always like, he's a football guy. And he's always like, who's going to compete with USA? Like they're going to win it going away, right? It's like, nah, like there'll be some good games. Just wait. He's like, well, who's the number one threat? Canada, like just it's gonna be a good game. And of course Canada loses. So I'm pretty sure he's looking at me like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to basketball right now. So I've completely lost all clout whenever it comes to that. So I just, yes, it looks like they're going. I'm still waiting for the one game where the other team gets hot or USA doesn't or something. But when they're locked in defensively, and they can really lock in defensively, like they can do some really cool stuff with certain lineups. I just don't know how it's going to happen.
I'm not sure how it's going to happen either. I mean, though, the team that like I feel like has not been discussed enough.
Germany.
Maybe
are you going to say Germany?
Is probably Germany, right? Franz Wagner looks unbelievable. Dennis Schroeder has been very good.
Dennis Schroeder's awesome in these games. Like it's incredible.
Absolutely incredible. Like Mo Wagner, and they have like all these other players that are like pretty solid, strong dudes to have around. Like they have real shooting. They have a team that makes sense together in a real way that I think could certainly press Team USA. But like I would never, like they're double-digit underdogs at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, does Daniel Tice step out and make some threes? But the thing is, USA has an answer to that. If that's what a team wants to do, you know what they do? They put Joel Embiid on the bench and they play Bam at the 5, or they play AD at the 5, and then they just switch things or play wherever they can play whatever coverage they need to play. Or if a team wants to go big and try to bully them with 2 bigs, they can match it with Bam and AD. And the 3-point line is short enough that Bam may even knock down a couple threes on the other end of the floor and keep some spacing. That was really cool the other day. They were switching everything on the ball, which usually gets you a mismatch, right? Like you're going to get your offensive big against Team USA's smaller guard. Well, you know who was waiting in the weak side corner to scram switch? Anthony Davis. So instead of having to leave Derek White on a 6'10", 250 pounder, they just scram switch with Anthony Davis. And then Bam was good enough out front to take the switch and stay in front of the smaller guard. So they just have answers. So as long as Kerr pushes the right buttons, and I'm not putting pressure on Steve Kerr, I'm just saying he has all of these options that they can answer whatever a team tries to throw at him.
They do just have too many options. I think that's the reality. Like they just have options to press whenever they need to, point blank. I mean, like I thought for a minute that, we talked last episode, I thought Serbia like could give them some minor issues, but again, like seeing Serbia, having lost by 20 to USA already or whatever the final score was. And then the way that Australia like really just kind of out athleted them in the first half. Serbia did a good job like slowing the game down in the second half. But I don't know that they're going to be able to do that against Team USA whereas like it's Josh Giddey, who is like wildly turnover prone when he tries to push the issue, and Dyson Daniels, who's like not an amazing scorer yet. You replace those guys with Anthony Edwards and Stephen Curry and LeBron James, and those are the guys pushing the pace. It's just a totally different ball game in terms of trying to slow the game down in the way that I think Serbia would need to even really compete in that game.
I think what Serbia has to do, we talked about this. They played even in the pool play with Team USA when Jokic was on the floor. And then it was like, I think it was legitimately 29-3 in how many ever minutes he was off the court. He's averaging just under 30 minutes a night in 4 games in the Olympics. You just have to, if I'm Serbia, I've been conserving him so I can play him 38 minutes tomorrow. And here's the other thing, like, if that's if Jokic wants to do, I mean, there's other factors into play here with, his professional career with the Nuggets and all of that. But, if he can go out and play 38 minutes tomorrow, that's the way Serbia stays in the game, along with Bogdan shooting lights out. He's at almost 50% from 3 throughout the tournament. Maybe you get a good Micic game. Maybe Jovic comes in and shoots the ball well and does some things. But, Jokic is the answer to this game staying close.
I think that's right. I will also say his overtime against Australia.
I didn't see it, but I heard it was sick. Was he
is one of the best 5-minute stretches of basketball I've seen in a long time.
Love it.
On both ends. Like he was switching out and like guarding Patty Mills and Josh Giddey. And then he had like a play because FIBA, you can tap the ball off the rim, right? Yep. He had a play where he did that. Like he had a play where I think he blocked a shot like from help, if I remember correctly. He had a play where he got a steal on defense. Like it was defense where he was sick. And then he made like a disgusting turnaround and had like a tap in. Like he was just so in control of every single thing that was happening in that overtime that it was like, okay, this is the best player on the planet. Just kind of point blank. He's unbelievable.
Very good at basketball, Sam. Very good at basketball.
Yeah. Having said that, like Serbia was weird in the first half. They just like didn't use him. Like he was much more of a passenger in the first half than what I thought he would be. To me, like if you're Serbia, your best bet is like running through him all the time.
Yep. And
maybe they will against Team USA. We'll see. A lot of potential options there.
Yep.
Australia basketball corner time.
Can
we have like a mini Australia basketball corner?
Do your thing.
So you did not watch the game against Serbia?
I did not see it. No.
It was maddening. They got up 24 in the first half because they just like completely like got up and down and really decided to be aggressive on offense. And Patty Mills got like insanely hot. Like it was, I'm so glad for Patty Mills because Patty Mills has been a legend here for so long, for literally 2 decades now. He's played in 5 Olympic games. I am so glad that he got that moment where he drilled 20 in the first half and then hit that insane pull up over Nikola Jokic to tie the game and send it to overtime at the end of regulation. Like if anybody deserves one of those moments, it's Patty Mills. the entirety of the Australian offense was built around, hey, let's just like ISO for Patty Mills and Josh Giddey, or we'll run like an early action, like a ball screen action, or like an off ball screen action at the top, maybe like a flare or something. Because Serbia was just extremely comfortable switching everything in that second half. And it just played right into Serbia's hands. Like they didn't attack like with Londale down on the block, didn't attack with Duop Reith on the block, except for one time. Honestly, like Jack McVay can kind of like attack on the block a little bit. Like if you would have gotten him matched up on like Avramovich, like you very easily could have tried to finagle that. There was just nowhere near enough offensive creativity within the Australian basketball like coaching staff and what the sets that they were running and everything, and trying to find different answers. Like they just didn't have enough answers to the test. Basically, it's not hard to take advantage of a switching defense. And it's, Brian Gorgon was leaving no matter what after the cycle. He signed, he's going to be coaching the Sydney Kings this year. That was always going to happen, but it was time. Gorgon got Australia its first Olympic Games medal in basketball and is a legend. And like, this isn't a statement on what Gorgon had been previously, but it was time to move on. And the next coach for Australia, to me, like really needs to be somebody who can be creative offensively, because like I was going through an exercise last night with a friend where we were like trying to figure out what the Australian basketball team is going to look like in 2028. Right. And like the names that will definitely be there are Josh Giddey, Dante Exum, Dyson Daniels, Josh Green, Jock Londale. Right. I would say Jack McVay will probably likely be there. I would say Matisse Thybulle will likely be there, just, as long as they can repair that relationship. And then after that, it's pretty open. Like the names we came up with were like Will Magnay and Duop Reith will certainly be available. Jack White will certainly be available. Josh Bannon, Luke Travers, Tyrese Proctor, Alex Condon, Alex Toohey, Johnny Furphy, Lachlan Olbrich is like a pretty interesting name to me. Sam Frawling is an interesting name, but like, Isaac Humphries is a guy that like, I think they should probably like take a look at and dust off and see if he can bring something to the big position again. But there's no scorer there. Like there's no primary option among that group unless Josh Giddey takes like an enormous leap or Dyson Daniels takes an enormous leap. So it's going to have to be like a team that gets really creative offensively and like generates offense and generates like open looks at a high level. And to me, I'm sorry to Basketball Australia, like you could sell me on Adam Caporn. I think Adam Caporn is probably the name on the current Boomers bench that makes the most sense. Jacob Chance is the guy that like I'm assuming long-term is probably going to be like a very, very high level coach. He's an assistant at Melbourne United right now. He's still in his 20s. He's not ready for something like this, but to me, they should go outside of Basketball Australia and outside of the country, much like Canada did with Jordi Fernandez, and find like a very high level offensive mind who will be able to really get flowing movement, flowing actions, and generate offense in a way that Australia is going to need, because they don't have a Kevin Durant to just go ISO, to quote Kevin Durant, like he loves flowing, right? They don't have a Kevin Durant to be able to do that at the Olympic level. So that's what they need.
Speaking of Kevin Durant, shout out Kevin Durant for breaking the all-time USA Olympic scoring record, men's and women's, and shout out Lisa Leslie, who was the holder of that record until Kevin Durant did that on Tuesday.
Yeah. Any thoughts on France and Germany here?
No, I mean, Germany will be an interesting team. Like I say, Schroeder just really balls out in these games. It seems like we've talked about this already. Franz is interesting because he's continuing not to shoot the three ball well, which is something that, has been talked about a lot, but is playing well in general. France, Wemby, I mean, I'm excited to watch Wemby. I haven't caught a lot of non-USA games, to be honest. I know with France, it's just the guard play, right? But they start to bring some of those guards along with Wembanyama, and they could be a real force. you think 4 years from now and Nolan Traore with Victor and some wings and that thing could be really interesting. I feel like we're headed for a USA Germany gold medal game, and then that would leave France and Serbia for the bronze medal game.
Yeah, like I'm just really interested in what kind of happens here with this France Germany game, because the Rudy stuff seems weird. Like, Vincent Collet said that like he hasn't had like an injured finger or whatever.
I say it was something with a finger, right?
Rudy said like he has the injured finger.
Oh,
so
I guess
that
interesting.
That whole thing seems very weird. France's guards so far have just not been very good.
Yep.
In my opinion. But like Yabusele has been quite good. And, Victor has obviously been quite good. Lasorte has been awesome. So like, can they punish Germany on the interior? Maybe. I kind of think that if France is going to win, it's going to have to be just like the Victor show.
Yeah.
Which would be fun.
I mean, I'm here for it.
I kind of want to see it. If France is going to beat Germany, like give me like 35 from Victor.
Here's the thing. Team USA versus Team France in Paris for the gold medal with Victor at the center of it all would be amazing.
That to me is the best. It's kind of like, all due respect to Germany, who I think is a better team than France in all honesty. And like, I would predict them to beat France just from like a coolness factor and like from a legacy perspective. Playing France in France with Victor, that would be the coolest potential outcome to me.
I agree. That would be awesome.
So I kind of hope we get it.
Yep.
I really just hope we get it and we get Victor a chance to like, think about this. This would be like Victor's first, like real, like the next, 4 days, really
big stage.
This is Victor's first, like big stage here.
Yeah.
Medal rounds of the Olympics. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's true. Summer League was like a show, but like that's not the whole world watching. That's not even, we're not even close to the same level of conversation. And then including it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Like this is kind of the first cool moment for Victor, or it has a chance to be, right? So far in the Olympics, he's averaging like 15 points and not shooting super well, but he's rebounding the ball well and he's been super active on defense. They just switched him to the center position, much like, the Spurs do. So many of these like old school coaches, they're like, oh, but he can dribble and pass and shoot. Like, we should just put him at the 4 and then we get rim protection at the 5. It's just like, no. Guys,
your advantage is that guy doing that at center.
That's the whole advantage, is that you get this guy at center who can dribble, pass, and shoot.
We need to make shirts
at an elite level.
We need to make shirts. It's about the size with the skill.
That's it. That's our shirt. We need to figure it out. Okay. Do you have anything else before we get out of here, Bryce? I think that
I have 2 questions. I have a trivia question if you want to play, and then I did have a Bryce asked Sam a question. Okay, my trivia question: this past season, 6 NBA players that played more than 41 games averaged at least 22 points and 7 assists. Cade Cunningham was one of those 6 players. Okay, 22 points, 7 assists last season, more than 41 games. That is important because 2 guys, Ja Morant and LaMelo Ball also did this, but not in 41 games. Can you name the other 5 players that averaged 22 and 7?
So Trae Young and LeBron are on there.
Yep.
Is Devin on there, or is he just below 7 assists?
Who?
Devin Booker.
Devin Booker is not on there. I can look up where he came up short. Well, it'd have to be assists.
Yeah, he might average like a little bit over 6 assists and not
6.9. That's a great call, Sam. 6.9 assists.
I knew I was close. Okay, so Jokic would be 1.
Yep. You're missing one other super obvious one. I didn't think you would get. Well, I should have known you would get Trae Young. You're missing one obvious one, and then one that I expect most people would not get.
One obvious one.
Super obvious one. You've said Jokic.
Shea didn't average 7 assists, so that's not Luka's the other obvious one.
There we go. So Luka, Jokic, LeBron are the 3 I think most people get. Trae Young, I think people often forget. And then there's one more that I will be actually surprised if you get. I will be impressed, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the 7 assists number.
Yes, I
seven
think this.
assists.
I think this person,
numbers.
and for what it's worth, this person averaged exactly 7 assists.
Yeah. Man, I'm mad that Booker didn't get it. That'd have been fun.
So close. That was close.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like running through teams kind of in my brain right now. To get this last one, can I pull up a list of teams, not players, teams?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Okay. So let's see here. I don't think Steph got to 7 assists.
Is not Steph.
I don't think Halliburton got to 22 points, did he?
That is correct. Many people say Tyrese Halliburton, and he did not average 22 points.
James Harden?
It is not James Harden.
Okay.
Steph averaged 5.1 assists this season. I'm telling you, like I'm shocked that this is the answer.
I don't think DeJounte got to 7 assists.
It is not DeJounte.
Paul George didn't get to 7 assists.
It is not Paul George. Would you like?
I weirdly don't think De'Aaron Fox got to 7 assists.
It is not De'Aaron Fox.
Who is this going to be?
Would you like a hint yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
De'Aaron Fox averaged 5.7 assists. It is an Eastern Conference player.
Okay.
Whose teammate is playing in the Olympics.
Eastern Conference player whose teammate is playing in the Olympics. Okay. That's an interesting clue. That's an interesting clue, Bryce. Okay. Eastern Conference. Yeah, Jimmy Butler did get to 7 assists.
Nope.
This is a gross question, Bryce. I like this.
You're welcome.
Brunson didn't get to 7 assists.
Brunson did not. Jimmy Butler averaged right at 5 assists. Actually, Jimmy Butler didn't average 22 points either this season. 21.
Oh, okay.
20.8.
Yeah, it was a weird Jimmy year.
It was.
Okay. I think that we're closing in on me actually having to. I mean, Scotty didn't average 7 assists.
His teammate does not play for Team USA. His teammate plays in the Olympics and not for Team USA.
Yeah, Bryce, yeah, Darius Garland didn't get to 22 points per game this year, I don't think.
What teammate of his is playing in the Olympics?
Yeah, I'm kind of still on the numbers at this point. Yeah, you're gonna have to give it to me.
Damian Lillard.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah, that was stupid. I don't think I realized that Lillard averaged 7 assists per game.
That's what I said. Like, I don't fault anybody for not getting that one. I think most people would get Luka, Jokic, and LeBron. I think most people would forget about Trey just because people tend to forget about Trey. And then Dame was not somebody. I mean, I don't think most people nobody would have got Cade Cunningham if I wouldn't have told you. Like, right? Like, you wouldn't have guessed Cade if I wouldn't have said it. Probably, right?
I probably I wouldn't have thought he hit the game played thing, to be honest with you. So yeah.
So Trey actually played the least amount on the list at 54, but yeah,
that makes sense.
I thought it was a fun question. I was doing some prep work for the Pistons podcast and just came across that, looking at Cade Cunningham.
I love it.
Yeah,
we should do that more often. That was good.
I can always set one up. That's I enjoy doing those. So
yeah, this is good. You'll make me look dumb on the show. It's great.
No, this is why. Did I tell you whenever Schlecht asked me to come on the whatever Slam and Jam, I didn't want to go on it. I told him, I said, if we have to do trivia, I don't want to come on the podcast. And this was like the first time he asked me, and I was like, dude, you don't understand how like scared I am to make a fool of myself with trivia. I am terrified. I have
Oh my God,
PTSD from the
Bryce.
first one of the first time I guessed on a podcast, and they asked me about the history of the Pistons' #1 picks, and I didn't know it. And I was like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
there goes all of my credibility.
Yeah, right. Okay, give me your other question here.
So this is, people reach out to me every once in a while. I'm sure they do. What advice would you give to somebody that is trying to follow in the footsteps of a Sam Vecenie at a lesser level, what I've done in the podcast, content creation world? Like what advice, what is be your best piece of advice for somebody trying to, I don't even want to say make it, because I don't even think making it requires it to be a full-time job, but just to find success in this realm?
So yeah, to me, like defining success is like being able to do this full time.
Sure.
Right. That's like the easiest way to define success. I would take the time to like really learn, which like I probably didn't do before I got my job. Like I got incredibly lucky getting that CBS job when I was 24 years old, and like probably shouldn't have had that job at 24 years old. But like as I had that job, like I really learned about basketball and like really, really like figured out basketball. Um, I would say that like taking the time and like really knowing your shit is just like number one. Just like doing the work is number one. Number two, I would say doing the work is probably not enough at this point. Um, I would get on TikTok, which I haven't done really yet, which is probably like a hindrance to this podcast in all honesty. The fact that I have not done that at this point. Um, I would say that getting on like TikTok and YouTube and like the big drivers of audience right now, understanding the marketplace is like a really important thing now. Like understanding where viewership comes from, understanding like I would not advise people go into writing for sure right now.
Yeah.
I would advise people go into video and go into social and things like that, because that it's just like I think an easier place to probably make a mark. If you want to go into like scouting, like full scale scouting, I would advise going. I don't know if I would advise going to work for like a college, but like finding ways to like get relationships is the key to me within that world. Like figure out a way to like get into the grassroots scene, get into the college scene, get into the NBA scene, like whatever way that you can get in, like get your foot in the door and do that. Maybe it's GAing for a D1 team. Maybe it's interning for an NBA team somehow. Maybe it's doing content creation and then doing that once they see what you're capable of. Plenty of people, including dear friend of the podcast, Adam Spinella and Cole Zwicker, like all those guys have gone to work in the NBA by doing that, right? Yeah. I wouldn't advise like majoring in journalism or anything. To me, like I would like you can learn the mechanics of like if you do want to go into writing, like you can learn the mechanics of journalism on the fly. And you can learn how to report and just like have a moral compass and be responsible, like as you're doing the job. I would recommend getting like a different thought process into things.
Sure.
Like a lot of mine comes like from more of like a business background, like, doing, more like MBA style stuff or economics, or if you want to take more like a humanist approach, psychology or something like that. I think that that's a little bit more valuable than like the mechanics of journalism and like going and doing that in school. I would say, I think that that's probably like, I don't know, that's like kind of rambly, I guess.
No, I love it. Like, I just feel like, I mean, I literally got off the phone with somebody yesterday who randomly reached out to me through DM and was like, hey, I want to know how you got to where you are. I want to start making growth. How do I do it? And it made me think. I think I agree with number one, what you said, I think is really like knowing the content, like knowing the game and figuring that out. And I think to piggyback off number two, I would say, I think what's helped me the most is I've taken advantage of every single opportunity that's been presented to me. And when I say like I'm talking about a phone call with Sam Vecenie 18 months ago that randomly came out of nowhere, eventually led to, I think was the start of me being on this podcast. And so I never take a DM for granted. I never take a phone call for granted. I never take a podcast guest appearance or a guest being on my podcast appearance. I never take those for granted. And every single time I look for the opportunity to make here's the thing, like we have a real relationship even outside of the podcast.
Oh, 100%.
And so making those real relationships out of all of those situations as well. And I never turn down an opportunity, whether it's no matter what. So I think that would be my big thing as well.
Yeah. Like when I was young, like I had like a rule that I literally wouldn't turn anything down. Like, that's not, I don't know if that's like sound like labor advice necessarily, but, I did a lot of work for free when I was younger. Right.
Yep.
So, like now it's hard for me now.
It's not as realistic for you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wish I had the time to do like more of this stuff as I like pull my freaking arm for my microphone like out of its socket as I try to like lift it up more toward my mouth. Like it's hard for me now to do that. Like I really want like I can't even fucking look at my like Twitter notifications anymore. Like it's, not to say that I'm, the shit or like whatever, right? It's just that like I get annoyed by things too easily. And it ends up being like a massive time suck when I have two basically full-time jobs between the podcast and the writing side with The Athletic. So, I'm literally already working on the draft guide. Like I wrote Ryan Kalkbrenner's draft guide profile yesterday. So it's, like I wish that I had more time to do that stuff. Like now is the time like to reach out to me. Like you at least have a chance to get me, but like it's hard for sure. But when I was younger, like I was in the same boat that you're saying, like I would literally like take any opportunity for sure.
Yep. No, let's say I was excited when you told me I could come up with a question today. And that's, I thought this was a good time of the year for that one.
Yeah, I like it. Those questions are always fun to me to try and think about because like it helps like A, like it helps other people, which is important to me, but like B, it does kind of help me navigate like where I should go on things too, right? You really can't like this is an industry where you can't stay stagnant. Like if you stay stagnant, you are just like dead, right? You become so like your opinion just moves beyond where it's valued anymore, right? So it's hard. It's a hard question. It's a real shifting target, I think, right now.
Yep. No, I'm glad you brought up the social media, YouTube, all that stuff. Cause like even in the 4 years or whatever I've been a part of this, the game has changed so much, and I still don't understand YouTube because I listen to podcasts all the time and I never listen to them on YouTube. But if you're not on YouTube, you're missing out on a huge viewership these days.
Yeah, no question. Like I find like random stuff all the time. Like right now, what I've been watching a bunch of recently, I've been watching so John Boy is like an enormous, media enterprise at this point. Shout out Jimmy O'Brien and those guys. But like they play like essentially like knockoff version called Blitzball of Wiffle Ball in a warehouse. And it is awesome. I love it. Like I truly like will just watch these dudes like throw like 70-mile-an-hour sliders like with a wiffle ball that look impossible to hit. I'm just like, holy shit, this is awesome. Like coming up with like creative, fun ideas and then like finding personality and like I had like no personality when I started probably because I was like too fucking terrified to have a personality because, even the way it's changed in, 11 years, 10 years or however long I've been doing this. Like when I was like learning, like personality was almost like beaten out of you on some level, right? But like personality is essential now. I think like people want to know who you are, and just like being a genuine like human being is like a huge piece of it, or like not being a genuine human being and coming up with like catastrophic takes all the time, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like it's an interesting time that I'm still trying to wrap my head around a little bit, but I love doing it. I love my job. I love coming on the show and talking to people, and trying to build a little fun community of little game theory listeners.
love it. Perfect.
Okay, Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, so at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, follow me over there. I tweet out whatever I've been on, quote tweet or whatever. I did a fun episode on the sports ethos fantasy basketball today. First time I got a chance to talk fantasy basketball about some of this rookie class and the Pistons at large. So check out that if you have time. Substack stuff. I've been breaking down the Olympic Games for Team USA. So that's over on Substack. I'll do that tomorrow during the game, have it out right after the game is over. Otherwise, Game Theory Podcast here with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will be back on, I would guess, on Sunday at this point. We'll figure out something to talk about on Sunday. My guess is it'll be gold medal match stuff. And then who knows what we'll talk about. We don't have I have like scheduled stuff coming like on our document, for a little while here, but I don't have anything like truly locked in for next week yet. Next week is like the last week where I don't have anything like 100% locked in. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. My guess is it'll be gold medal, but probably something else.
Perfect.
Okay. Keep it locked here. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.